You probably speak English since you watching a video in English. But do you want to be monolingual all your life, or do you hope to be bilingual, or trilingual, or even quadrilingual? I love learning new languages. It opens so much of the world to me. I speak English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian, so I have some experience that I can share with you. How do you get at speaking another language? If you chosen second language is brand new to you, your first step will be able to just recognize it. First, what's the written language look like? Let's pull up a page in Wikipedia. We have nice feature where you can look at the subject in many different languages. What do you notice? Does it use the same alphabet as English? Can you tell the difference between related languages like French and Italian? Observe the different use of accents or special characters. Now, this next part is harder. What does this language sound like? International cinema is a great way to be exposed on new languages in real situations. You may find that initially it just sounds like an intelligible learn, but eventually you recognize where sentences end, and then you can start to pick out individual words. You training your ear to know what to expect in the new language. You might feel most comfortable learning from a textbook, and that's perfectly fine. You do feel a sense of satisfaction each time you finish a chapter. How do you pick a textbook? You could always go online and see what textbook they are using at school you admire. Ask advice from friends who have studied the language before. They might even loan you some book. If you do get a textbook, try to find one that has HR materials like audio recordings. The more ways you expose to the language, the better. But what's even more effective in making your own study materials? We recommend situational learning. Think about the situations you find yourself in and what you like to be able to say and understand in your new language. This adds a touch of personal motivation to be able to handle yourself in public. For instance, you're visiting Barcelona and you really want hot chocolate and churros. How do you ask for help? Picking up cafe, finding it on a map, catching a tram, ordering and paying when you finish. This is a very specific scenario with typical sentences that you specialize in vocabulary. I doubt you're going to find this at the chapter in. But it's important to you to be able to handle this situation in your new language. Start here. Prepare for your scenario, referring to a textbook or phrase book, or even better, with the help of native speaker, write out the dialogue and a list of vocabulary. Practice with friends, and of course, don't forget the power of flashcards. Having the confidence to be able to handle yourself in one scenario lets you move on to another and another and another. This scenario will give you anchors to grab onto when you are in a new situation. Now that you know how to buy a ticket for the tram, it will be much easier to have to buy a ticket for the bus or train. If you know how to order in a cafe, it will be easier for you to learn how to buy things in the department store. This scenario ties into many others. To make your language learning really robust, along with learning scenarios, you should also learn the basic rules of grammar. These will come more easily to you when you have a set of 20-15 sentences you're already very familiar with. Notice how sentence construction in your new language differ from English. Are the words in the same order? Adjective, noun, verb, adverb? Or are they inverted compared with what you're familiar with? Does it go noun, adjective? You can fall back on those sentences you already know very well from your scenario, and those will help you make sense of grammar rules. In this way, the focused studies, you can learn a lot on your own. Of course, there are really no substitute for the immersion, listening and speaking the language with native speakers with no English interruptions. For many years, depending on where you live, it was very hard to do this. Imagine trying to learn Spanish in, say, Minnesota or with Stockholm. You have to look really hard to find someone to talk with. I actually moved to Italy and became fluent in Italian. And now, thankfully, you can do immersion online. You can join classes and talk to native speakers all without leaving your house. We recently learned about Lingoda, an online language learning service, and we thought we give it a try. Lingoda lets you work with group classes or individual tutors who are native speakers. Group classes are a little less expensive and may be a good way to ease your new language, as well as give you a chance to meet other people who you could practice with. You start at Lingoda with an assessment test to place you at the right level of instruction, and then you progress your own speed, taking classes on your own schedule. You can start as an absolutely beginner and work on your way to fluency. You can even get certification that helps you with jobs. Now let me share with you some tips and tricks I learned through study language. Tips number 1. Work very hard on your pronunciation. Pronunciation first. Start by imitating what the language sounds like when you watch a foreign film. You may feel silly, but you have to master the sound of your new language. This may help to know their finite number of sounds you will need to make. For instance, the French phonetic alphabet containing 37 sounds. You can probably pronounce most of them just fine with practice. Usually people have trouble with just one or two of the sounds. For instance, the French R is nothing like the English R. You have hold your tongue completely differently. So when you see R written down, it can be confusing. Many beginning students pronounce it incorrectly and then they have to break that habit. So it's better if you start pronouncing things properly as soon as possible. It can help to imitate the way a French person speaks. This is not to be rude or mean or anything like that. You're doing this to learn how to make the natural French sounds. Say je téléphone lets you understand that TS is not pronounced the same way in French as in English. Tip number 2. Grammar is easier to learn if you understand the grammar of your own language. So check out our English grammar series. The more languages you learn, you start to notice the things that all have in common. All languages have a way to express an action, a verb. You can say whether something is happening now, or in the future, or in the past. All languages have a way of identifying the subject, who or what is doing the action. Next comes replace that subject with a pronoun. Luke went to the store. He went to the store. Soon you figure out that there isn't that much grammar to learn, and you can pick up a lot of it by practicing properly constructed sentences, like with those scenarios we talked about before. Another thing you get more relaxed about once you learn more than one language is number. Each language has its own number system. Some will feel more comfortable for you because it's similar to your native language. Others, well, you learn how to count by 20s and subtract 10 or whatever. You can do it. Tip number 3. Build your vocabulary. This is your biggest. This is the part of learning language that will take you the longest. In fact, you might never be finished building your vocabulary. The trick is knowing where to start. It turns out, and the great majority of the time, you use a very small number of words. Linguists have analyzed word frequency in English, French, or the major languages. By learning the 100 most common words, you'll be able to understand about 50% of the language. That's an incredible head start. Learn the 500 most common words and now you understand 67%. 1,000 words gets you 75%. Buy a frequency dictionary and commit yourself to learn first the 100 most common words and the 5 most common words and the 1,000 most common words. This will pay off rapidly. The best way to learn vocabulary is with flashcards and spaced repetition. Watch our video on flashcards to get some pointer and how to use them most efficiently. We suggest you focus on phrases that use a vocab term rather than individual words. This is much more powerful, both because it helps your memory to learn the word in context and because phrases can immediately be used in speaking and writing. The cheap little phrase book really come in hand here. You might be surprised to find you already know many of the words in the new language. About 30% of English words are derived from French, 30% from Latin, and 30% from the Germanic languages. This isn't going to help you very much if you are learning, say, Russian or Japanese. However, one interesting side benefit from learning such a different language is that you acquire new ways to express an idea. For instance, the Japanese term wabi-sabi refers to the beauty in imperfection. There's no denying if you speak English, you can get by in many places. But to be a true citizen of the world, you want to be able to say bonjour, konnichiwa, hola, guten tag, bonjour. Being able to make yourself understood is an important part of being a great student. Ciao.